Yeah, this past week, though, I was out of town Monday through Friday. In the fall, I take a 1 week prayer and study trip. And when I come back, my goal on Friday is that by that time, I have the entire outline for sermon series for the next year. Did that last year, and that's why the sermon series was actually scheduled for right now. So if you feel like, man, this is just coming at the right time, that decision was actually made with me hopefully being led by God last October. And so when I left town Monday, I helped my son put 2 new tires on his trailer that he just bought. It's a large trailer. He does a mowing business. And I get a text message Tuesday morning that we were robbed. I'm out of the house one stinking night, and we got robbed. He got out in the driveway to go drive over to Labette for school, and someone stole the trailer. He's got about $1,500 of his own money invested in that trailer. They rifled through the back part of his toolbox and pulled away about $100 worth of stuff on that. And I just want to say how powerful it was that when we started getting word out, I mean, I don't know how many Facebook friends I have, maybe 4 or 5, I'm not sure. But over 350 people shared the flyer, and the confirmation, the affirmation, the support. I'm glad to be your pastor, but I'm even more glad just to be able to be part of this congregation. We actually had someone from the congregation start a GoFundMe for my kid. How do you feel when someone starts a GoFundMe for your kid? You know, even if he is 19, has more muscles than me and longer hair than me, much longer hair than me. But we really appreciate the outpouring of support. And I had 3 people after first service say, does he have a trailer now? Does he have a trailer now? And I forgot to mention that. We had about 8 trailers offered to us for one for him to borrow. And he does have one, and it's working, so he was able to work yesterday, even though the mowing season is winding down. So that was kind of a shot to the gut, actually, which actually comes into play for the message. What do I think about God? What comes into your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you? Well, he's working and he's trying to honor God and he's giving away a lot of his money to missions. Well, God shouldn't let bad things happen to him. Therefore, there's no God. That is a path you could take. When I asked him how he was praying about it, he said, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. He just didn't finish the sentence because he probably doesn't familiar with it. So blessed be the name of the Lord. Whether your trailer's there in the morning or your trailer's not there in the morning. It all depends what kind of God you believe in. If you believe in an angry God or you believe in a God that rewards good behavior, well, then what happened in our life this last week is evidence against his existence. Or if you believe that there is no God whatsoever, when we go ahead and we take a look at our environment, the animals, work, property of others, money, it will determine how we interact with those things based on what we think about God. What makes sense of what you see and know? When we think about nature and humanity and the existence of evil and disaster and meaning and consciousness and value, when we think about those things. We've been ending each one of these services in this series with the idea of playing a beautiful piece of music. You know, some of the most beautiful music ever written by humankind. And we'll be doing another one of those at the end of service today, because when we hear the music, it's like, wait a second, if I'm just chemistry, biology, and physics, this shouldn't matter to me. It's just noise. But it's not. It's more than noise. But just a heads up, today is the song we're going to play is not one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written by humankind. You wouldn't have it in your wedding, but it will definitely take you somewhere transcendently. When you hear it, you're going to smile. At least I hope you'll smile. If you're not going to smile, you might want to try out for the Grinch in a Christmas play. Let's just say that. So, back the basics of the series. If you're standing on this, you believe there's theism. There's a God. There's a God in the universe. And if you want to doubt God's existence, you can do that, but you can't do that standing over here. You've got to do that standing on an alternate set of beliefs that you think are true. And then you've got to distinguish, what am I actually standing on if I'm over here? Which is why a lot of us start scooting over here, but we never actually make the leap to atheism. We don't have irrefutable proof either way. At some point, many of you walked away from God, but the God you walked away from needed to be walked away from because you were believing in a Santa Claus God. In 3rd grade, you were told bad things happen to bad people, and if you do good things like run your mowing business and honor God with your money, bad things won't happen to you. Well, that's a crock. 1, that's not how life works, and 2, that's not how God works. If we're going to judge by how good we are and how good God is by how good we're treated, he must have really hated Jesus. And I don't think he did. So the goal of this series was mainly to go ahead and communicate to what we call nuns and duns. Nuns, not ladies walking around in a habit outfit from the Roman Catholicism. But nuns meaning, oh, am I Protestant? No. Am I Catholic? No. Am I Islam? No. I'm no affiliation. I'm a nun. Or duns. I'm done with that. I believe when I was a kid, my parents made me go. I went on Parents' Weekend. When my parents came to visit me, I went to church, and I hope that pastor remembered my name. Oh, those are fun. That's fun on Parents' Weekend when that happens. Hey, pastor. I'm like, I haven't seen them for a year, but their mom's here with them this weekend. I hope I can remember their name. It happens all the time. The nuns and people that are just done, that if you've walked away from faith, maybe you've walked away unnecessarily. Maybe you walked away unnecessarily, and maybe it's time to come back. Because you can actually belong and feel like you're a part, hopefully, of this church before you actually believe. Jesus was constantly inviting people that did not believe to come along and follow. Because when you look at the followers of Jesus, it's kind of wild. There are people that are over here going, we don't believe, we don't believe. Oh, wow, we believe. Ooh, they killed him. Ooh, we don't know what to believe now. Ooh, this stinks. He's risen? No way. They doubted. And then they believed. He's risen. Then they changed the world. Literally, historically, changed the world. So if you've been standing on the side of doubt, the New Testament's filled with people like you that walked over to belief. And maybe today is the day you can make that step and you can walk over to belief as well. And I want to just challenge you and encourage you to take that next step. You're going to have to understand that you may not understand everything. Let me say that again. You'll have to understand that you may not understand everything. And you never will. But don't discard what's undeniable. There's a reason you haven't taken the leap and hopped over here. You can't make that leap because you know what you're standing on isn't real. And isn't how you think and isn't how you feel. So don't discard what's undeniable simply because some of it to you is unexplainable. Let me say it again. Don't discard to you what you know is undeniable. I know there's a God. I know there is. Don't discard what's undeniable simply because some of it might be currently unexplainable in your life. So that's where we want to start. And we're going to bring this plane in for a landing today in this series. It's a 6-part series. In reality, it's one long sermon, but nobody wants to hear all 6 parts on one Sunday. Can I get an amen on that? Yeah, no one wants to hear all 6 parts on one Sunday, and I don't want to do it all on one Sunday. So a quick question for you. Shout out the answer. Who is the easiest person to deceive on the planet? Ready, go. Who said the American public? I heard that. Did somebody say the American public? The easiest person to deceive on the planet is yourself. Self-deception. We're really good at it. Come on, you see some of the people post the photos on Facebook where they think they got all those 6-pack abs and they're posting that photo, you're going, ooh, dude, Photoshop, you need some. Yeah, come on, if I was trying to post that, it's like, no, put the shirt back on, Dad, put the shirt back on. But honest with yourself. When you have self-honesty, you remove the lid to growth. When you have self-honesty, you remove the barrier to humility, and humility is almost always a forward step. So let me ask you this question. How different would your family of origin be if your father had been honest with himself? Now, for the 2% of you that had amazing great dads, great, you can tune out for a moment. But if your father had been honest with himself when he looked in the mirror about his drinking, about his anger, about his work habits, his commitment issues, what if your father had been honest and looked in the mirror and said, these are my issues, I need to deal with them, instead of putting them under the rug? Everything would have changed pretty much in your entire life if he simply would have looked in the mirror and been honest with himself. And that's what I want to challenge you to do today. Someone who was very honest is an atheist philosopher who is a professor at Emory University in the New York University system. His name is Thomas Nagel. And he wrote a book that you don't want to read. Let me just tell you that. I read the first chapter and got a migraine. The title of the book is Mind and Cosmos, which sounds pretty blasé, but the subtitle is insane. Why the materialist neo-Darwinian conception of nature is almost certainly false. The atheist philosopher says there's no way natural selection is true. That'll get him in trouble. But he says because natural selection does not explain and cannot explain undeniable phenomenon such as value. You run over a squirrel on the way home versus running over a 5-year-old on a tricycle. There's a difference because there's value. This doesn't explain that. He says there's no way natural selection can be true. The reason I quote him is because he's very honest, and his honesty is astonishing and liberating because he also wrote this quote. I want atheism to be true, and am made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. So, with that as a foundation, if you've stepped away from believing in God, there's 3 main ways we generally do it. Something horrible happened, you're going, that thing was horrible, there can't be a God. Or you read something, ooh, this is information that says there's no God. But could it possibly be, and may it very well likely be for most of us, that when we walk away from God, it's not because of something that happened to us, and it's not because of something we read, but faith got inconvenient for us. We had relationship goals, and believing in God was hindering those relationship goals, so we had to step away. We had financial goals, and faith in God was hindering those financial goals, so we had to step away. We had sexual desires that we wanted to chase, and man, faith in God was really cramping my style, so what it really came down to was a matter of our resistance, not any evidence about God's existence. Let me say that again. It really came down to our resistance, not evidence against God's existence. You didn't sit there and go, man, when I look at the evidence, I'm not sure there's a God. No, you're going, oh man, this isn't how I want to live my life. I like some of the stuff over there. Well, maybe there isn't a God. And what you did is you started hunting for evidence against God after you realized that you thought he was limiting your life. When in reality, there's no one that wants you to have more freedom than he does. And that's the question that we've got to face. You see, we're not on a truth quest. We say that we are. It looks noble to say, try and go on Facebook and say, I'm searching for truth. Someone share truth with me. I do not want to read your wall. It's going to be a mess. And then people are going to put GIFs on it to make it even worse. GIFs or GIFs? Am I pronouncing it wrong? Yeah, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. My son's embarrassed now. Pascal said this, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on what they find attractive. Augustine said something very similar. We like the truth when it enlightens us and agrees with us, but we hate the truth when it convicts us. And if we're going to walk away from the truth because of evidence or information, well, my goodness, seek more evidence and information. But if we're walking away from faith in God, if we're walking away from truth because we just hope it's not true, and this is where I hope you'll get, and this is my hope and this is my prayer, that if you're struggling with belief in God, you will look in the mirror and be honest and say, it's not that I don't believe in God. It's, honestly, I don't want him to be there. And if you can get to that spot, that's a great move. Because now you're honest. And now you're honest with yourself, and now God's got room to move in your life. But if you keep pretending, oh, I believe in God, but drop that. You're lukewarm. What do you do with lukewarm water? Yeah, we spit it out. Be honest. If you don't believe in God, why not just come to grips with the fact you don't want him to be there? But there's something about that, because we know that if we actually believed in God, if you're following along in your notes, if we believed in God, we know if there's a God, that I'm guilty, and I don't want to be guilty. I don't want to be guilty, so therefore I'm going to be over here. It's more convenient if there's no God, because if there's a God, even the atheist knows if there's God, there's guilty, because there's things in your past, and there's things in my past that are big, bold, and embarrassing. And they're not mistakes. They're sins. They're sins that we're ashamed of. And the word shame and the word sin, our culture doesn't like it very much. But let's be open and honest. We planned to do them. We made sure the parents were gone before we started the activity. We made sure we even brought a change of clothes. We had a designated driver. We bought protection. We cleared the browser history. There was no accidental mistake about it. We did not go on spring break saying, oh God, let your presence come with us. We went on spring break saying, oh God, leave us alone. We meant to do it. We're sinners. We're more wicked than we can imagine. But if we're in Christ, we're more loved and accepted than we ever dreamed we could be. Because he doesn't just hold our wickedness against us, he pays for it. I've got to keep moving this morning. If there's God, I'm guilty. And if there's God, that means I'm accountable. And I don't want to be accountable. And that's inconvenient. But if I don't want to be accountable, I can just say there's no God and then get away from that. But if there's a God, then I know I'm accountable. And I've got to pay back. And if I break it, I have to pay for it. But there's some things that I've done, there's some things that you've done that we can't pay back. The debt's too high. And it's not just a financial debt. There's some people that you hurt in your life and you hurt them on purpose. And then you bragged about hurting them, whether you want to go back to middle school, high school, college. We've all done that. And we all come up guilty on that, and we all come up accountable. We realize when we're accountable, we can't go ahead and go back. We can't give them back those years. You can't go back and give your wife those years that you stole from her. You can't go back to your kids the 5 years you were out mistaking on business trips and then come back and give your kids back those 5 years. You can't do that. And I totally get the pushback because, crud, I'm talking to people that are sitting in a church. I get that. Pastor, we're not as bad as some other people. You're absolutely wrong and right. If you want to compare yourself to other people, go ahead. But is anybody here not guilty? Anybody here going to say, I haven't broken any of the 10 Commandments? And maybe there is. Or maybe you're going to go, but I don't believe in God. Okay, don't judge yourself by God's standards. Judge yourself by your standards. Let's say you wore a microphone your entire life. And at the end of your life, the God that I think exists comes to you and says, hey, good news, I'm not going to judge you by the 10 Commandments. I'm just going to judge you by how you judged everybody else. You know when you judge their driving? And you judge their parenting skills at a restaurant, and how you judged their wardrobe at Walmart, and when you talked about how bad they messed up their marriage, I'm only going to judge you by how you judged others. Let's play the tape. We're all guilty. That means we're all accountable. Is that a reason not to believe in God? No. But it is a reason to say you don't want him there. Who needs God? We all do, but do we want him? At that point, maybe not. Maybe we're running for our life. Because then, crud, if there's a God and I don't think he's there, then I'm wrong. And that's a word Americans just don't say. We don't say I'm wrong. What happens when one of our politicians lies to us? I misspoke. We create new words. We create new words to cover it up. But the first step forward in almost anything is humility, which is what our Savior showed. And the first step backward in almost any situation is pride, which is exactly what our enemy throws at us. If there's a God, I'm guilty, I'm accountable, and I'm wrong. But these aren't really arguments for or against anything. They're the responses on how we resist. Because the real issue probably is not science. It's probably not the church. It's probably not stupid Christians you run across, because I have too, and some people would probably accuse me of that. It's not even something in the Bible you've got a question about. Did Jonah really get swallowed by a fish? The real issue is not God's existence, it's our resistance. And if you can get to an honest place where you can honestly say, I think I don't believe in God because I don't want to, you can now get in the middle of the story where God from the beginning has been pursuing a relationship with a race of people, and we are the human race, with a race of people that have broken relationship with him. He wants to restore that relationship. Because, if God, we're guilty, we're accountable and wrong, but if God, there's forgiveness. If God, there's forgiveness. That can be forgiven. Not your mistakes. Mistakes don't need to be forgiven. Mistakes need to be sometimes accepted and then said, hey, I understand you dropped the dish. That's all right. It broke. It's okay. It was from the Ming Dynasty and my great-great-grandmother got, but it's okay. We'll be all right. We'll be all right. If God, there's forgiveness. Some people say Jesus was perfect. Yeah, probably so, but what Scripture means is he's sinless. Perfect means he always got a hole in one when he golfed, if he golfed, even a mini golf. And it also means he never dropped the dish when he was helping Mary with the dishes. Sinless is different. So there's not just forgiveness for your mistakes, there's forgiveness for your sins, the things you meant to do, you planned to do them. How did this keg show up at my party? I have no idea. Here's the money I owe you for the keg. Oh, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was purposeful sin. And if there's God, there's forgiveness for that sin. Forgiveness. Clean on the inside that you don't have to pay back. You realize that your sin is a platform God stands on to show you his love? Because God demonstrated his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That tells me it's not performance-based. That tells me it's not, you be really good and God will receive you. No. That means in your worst wickedness, he's still there with arms open wide, saying, come on, I'm waiting. In your worst wickedness. If God, there's forgiveness, and if God, there's relationship. That's why God just doesn't forgive everybody. Boom, I just want to forgive everybody. Woo, it doesn't matter what you do or what you think. I just forgive everybody. Woo, it's like Oprah giving out cars to everybody. Woo-hoo-hoo. He doesn't want to just give you a car. He wants that relationship restored. And that's what he's after. Because all relationships are going to demand sacrificial actions. There's going to have to be sacrifice. Let's get a quick show of hands. Any parents in the house? Quickly. Hand up. If you're a parent, all right, you can put it back down. What would you think about a parent who said, yay, a baby. Now I can keep all my disposable income and all my time and energy. No, you'll lose it like crazy. Why? All relationships require sacrificial love. What would we call a parent who did not give any of their income or any of their time to a child? We'd call them under protective custody. Because the relationship requires sacrifice. Relationship requires love. Sin requires forgiveness and restitution. Somebody has to absorb the cost. That baby came into your life going, feed me, diaper me, buy me new toys now. Who's going to absorb the cost for that? The baby can't. The parent has to absorb the cost. So for my next trick, I want to show you I have nothing up my sleeves, and all I need is a brand new iPhone 8. Who has one? Who has an iPhone 8? Come on, someone does. Who's got an iPhone 8 in this room? Anybody? You're all pointing, so bring it up, guys. May I please borrow your iPhone 8 for my next demonstration? Thank you. This is an iPhone 8. Everybody see this iPhone 8? And that's Gyla. Gyla is our friend because Gyla and Brian are actually the ones that loaned my son a trailer to borrow. Now, what would happen if I took this new iPhone 8 and dashed it on these rocks full force? She wouldn't be my friend, would she? Your phone's going to be fine. What would happen to our relationship? Yeah, it'd be bad. But what if then I pulled $800 out and I paid for it? It'd still be a rough relationship because she can buy a new one. I'll absorb the cost. Not by mistake, bam, I jammed it down there. Okay, here's $800. You can buy a new one. I absorb the cost. What if I take it and smash it on the rocks and I say, I'm not going to pay for it? She can take the trailer back. She's going to have to absorb the cost and take $800 and go buy a new phone. And our relationship's going to be awkward. She's not going to want to see me, and if I see her coming around the corner, I don't want to see her. You ever have that kind of relationship with God? That when he comes knocking, you run to another part of the store because you really don't want to make eye contact because of what's happened? So what if I take it and I smash it and I tell her I'm not gonna buy it, but she says, but I'm going to pay for it. And I'm going to keep pursuing you, Pastor, at Walmart because I want a friendship with you. I don't want to lose the relationship over what you did. What you did was wrong. You shouldn't have done it, but I paid for it, and I'm going to pursue you until we get that friendship back. I've got two options. I can continue to run away from her because that's awkward. Or the option that I normally try and do, thanks for the credit card, by the way. The option I normally try and do is, hey, let me pay, I'll just pay you back in a little bit. I'm going to stop trying to pay God back. Christ demonstrated his love for you that while you were a sinner, while you were smashing the phone on the rocks, he paid for it because he wants you. He's not wanting to get even. Brian, can you come get your wife's phone? That way you'll look like the hero. Thank you. Christ absorbed the cost of whatever you broke, of whatever you've done. I've got to keep moving. So if God, there's also truth. Every time in your heart you say, you shouldn't do that, or you should do that, there's got to be a basis for that. That basis doesn't exist if there's no God. If God, there's truth, and there's forgiveness, and there's relationship. So who wants God? Well, at some point in our life, all of us told him to get lost. Maybe it was a special weekend we wanted him to get lost. Maybe it was a spring break we wanted him to get lost. Or maybe it was a whole decade or a whole marriage or a whole affair we wanted him to get lost. But who needs God? We all do. We all do. So I want to bring this series down to a total conclusion with a story about one of Jesus' brothers. The scripture is very clear. Jesus did have brothers. He didn't have any older brothers and sisters because you can't be born of a virgin and have older brothers and sisters. That's very awkward. So being born of a virgin, but he did have a brother, and his next oldest brother was named James. But something you need to know about Jesus' brothers and sisters, they did not believe in him. And the Bible states it plainly. Now come on, if the Bible was myth and fake and legend, why would you put in there, hey, this Jesus guy is awesome, you should follow him, woo-hoo-hoo. By the way, his own family didn't think he had it all together. You wouldn't put that in there. But James did not believe his brother Jesus. Before the crucifixion, James did not believe in his brother Jesus. After the crucifixion, James did not believe in his brother Jesus. After the crucifixion and something else, James is now leader of the church. Resurrection. I mean, some of you don't even respect your brother. Can you imagine seeing him raised from the dead? Something happened in James that caused him to bow his knee to his brother. And so Josephus tells us, and Josephus is a first century historian. Josephus is not in the Bible. Josephus was a Jew in the first century that wrote down a lot of Jewish history. And he wrote down that in AD 62, the high priest had James arrested. James, the brother of Jesus, arrested. James, the brother of Jesus that did not believe in Jesus after the crucifixion, arrested James, and then illegally, against the laws of the land, had him convicted and condemned and sentenced to death by the religious leaders, not the political leaders. Well, you take someone, the political leaders, if they've broken a law or a crime, they can put him to death in that day. But he took him to the religious leaders. Because apparently James, because of something he believed about his brother that he didn't believe in, but now he believed in, did something that ticked off the religious leaders, and they had James put to death. Basic Jewish history, New Testament history, AD 62. If you are someone that doubts, but you're sensing God drawing you to belief, Jesus' brother knows how you feel. Totally. James had doubt. He ended up believing so strongly he gave his life. But before he did, he wrote something down. And it was shared among Christians like crazy and eventually put in the Bible. Time was short and so was his book. It had 5 chapters. And in chapter 4, he wrote this. You have doubts? Come near to God. And he'll come near to you. Come near to God. He'll come near to you. But then James went boldly and said, wash your hands, you sinners. Yes, sinners. It wasn't an accident you had a designated driver that night. It wasn't an accident you had protection with you. It wasn't an accident. You planned it. It was sin. So come near to God. He'll come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Well, I just don't want to believe. Purify your heart. You know he's there. You know he's real. It's time to quit behinding what you hope is logic and realize he's there. Then James continues and says this. Humble yourselves before the Lord. That's how you come near to God. You humble yourself, and you're all capable. And what does God do? He'll lift you up. So when you consider everything, and you look at what God has done and what he is doing, and you look at the example of someone who went from doubt to belief, his own brother, what makes sense of what you're seeing now?